Hey everyone, welcome and thanks for tuning into LCC Remix Roundtable Edition. This is a discussion where our pastors unpack the current message in a deeper way. We hope this episode encourages and speaks to you.
Well, welcome back to another episode of LCC Remix. We're so glad that you're listening to us today. I'm Steve, and we have here Pastor
Greg,
and we have our Director of Operations,
Scott,
and we have Pastor
Aaron.
That's Aaron.
Aaron.
Aaron. Yes, we are all here ready to discuss another topic, another question in our current series, Questions Jesus Asked, where we're going to be talking about logs today. When you guys were kids, did you all ever have Lincoln logs?
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Did you like them?
Of course.
So there was this battle in my mind about what was better, Tinker Toys or Lincoln logs. And you remember Tinker Toys?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
They were little wooden the sticks. And so I was more like a Tinker Toy kind of person because, you can make like motorcycles and cars a lot easier. Lincoln logs were just a log cabin. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really appreciate log cabins as much when I was a kid. I do today.
See, but you could build a log cabin and then take your Evel Knievel motorcycle.
Oh, yeah.
And jump into the log cabin.
I like that.
And destroy it. That was a cool thing.
Evel Knievel was my favorite.
I had the one that, I wish I still had it. Probably worth a lot of money, but.
It may be, yeah.
Yeah, you wind it up and it goes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does a wheelie across the room.
Yeah, it had the little ramp it went down, right? And it would go across the room. You could jump it off the thing.
Yeah, you just crank it up and go.
Yeah, and then when he crashed, all the bones would break.
And they had a little hospital room came with it. Put him in the hospital room for several weeks.
You could triage your Evel Knievel. Oh, my goodness. He tried to jump the Snake River again. Didn't he try the Grand Canyon or something at one time? No, not the Grand Canyon. It was Snake River. Yeah. Grand Canyon's way too big.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to jump the Grand Canyon on a motorcycle.
I just need to hit the speed of light to get enough.
Could you imagine? Oh, my word.
I had one of those. It was an erector set. So it was metal.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. That was cool. But it had all little bolts and nuts, and you had to build, and actually had a little machine or a little motor, actually, so you could build a crane and whatever, and hook that up.
Those were
it would
cool.
Work. And,
I didn't have that, but
you didn't have that technology?
Well, I went to like friends that had that.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Does that make sense?
I did that with video games. We didn't have any video games, so Pong.
That just reminds me of the scene in Sandlot when they try to use the erector set to get the ball. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
They build the whole thing and it pops open. And
it's great. From the giant dog.
Yeah.
Classic movie. Watched that not too long ago, and I think we talked about it. It was kind of surprising. I didn't remember some of the language in it is not really appropriate for kids. Maybe we talked about, I don't know, but I talked to someone. Maybe it was my imaginary friend. I don't know. But Sandlot came up, and I know it's like rated PG, but it was like, wow, they could have just cut out some of that,
like the Bad
inappropriate
News Bears
language. Yeah, like the Bad News Bears.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Old.
But we've been really this is like hanging out, reminiscing about the 70s here for a little bit.
Yeah. You weren't even born in the 70s.
Yes, I was. Born in 73.
73. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
my fault. Yeah, you're right.
I was old enough.
Sorry.
Not even born in the 70s. How old? So you think I'm like 40?
Well, you look so young.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. With my Gorbachev-like spots all over my face. The people just stare
agile,
at them.
Young
What is
and
that?
agile. Yeah.
I was getting a little paranoid. Like, what is this on my forehead?
It's the wine stain.
Yes. Gorbachev's head looked like a map of the globe. It was his plan for conquest. Anyway.
You never forgot it.
We digress. So, that all came out of a question, or a comment. We're going to talk about logs. We're going to talk about logs.
We're going to link them all together.
Yes, we're going to see how it all ties together.
It does.
But, I mean, Jesus in Matthew chapter 7, he talks about, judging. He says one of the most famous verses in Scripture, and I mentioned on Sunday how this is like the verse that non-believers like to quote probably more than any other verse. Judge not, lest you be judged. And so we're talking about judgment. We're talking about the specks and logs in our own eyes. So let's talk about judgment for just a minute. I mean, as Christians, are we called to judge? $1 million question.
I was going to say something funny, and I saw Aaron smile. So go ahead, Aaron. Something obviously popped into your head.
No, like nothing like starting off with a easy question.
Super easy.
I thought it was pretty judgmental.
I'm judging you now based on your answer.
Yeah, the Bible said, "He that is spiritual judges all things," and you have to make judgment calls every moment of every day. That's part of life. You cannot get away from it. You're a parent. You make judgment calls concerning your kids. It's part of life. You have to judge all the time. When Jesus talked about, and you brought it out Sunday, we are not in a position to condemn. So I can't say because of your sin or because of this you are therefore condemned for eternity. That's not we are not to do that. But we are. It says if you see a brother in a fault, go and talk to help restore that person. So if you never say, well, if that's wrong, how can you So there's you have to judge all the time. You're not supposed to be judgmental, which is somebody always looking down their nose at, and that's what that verse is talking about, not seeing their own issues, but being very aware of everyone else's issue.
It's my spiritual gift.
I've had people tell me that.
Criticism is my spiritual gift.
Someone told me their spiritual gift was pointing out other people's faults.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a superpower.
Yeah. And
where can I get that gift?
Yeah.
It's not the Holy Spirit.
Spencer's. Yeah.
Spencer's? Oh my goodness. What?
That's about where it belongs,
Okay.
But it was in the mall. Used to see it in the mall.
We know it's still there.
Oh, I haven't been in a mall in a long time.
Falling off pretty.
Yeah,
fast.
I mean, I remember like in the 80s, there was always, you could go find some cool posters and stuff. For nostalgia's sake, the last time it was in a mall, maybe a year and a half ago, my wife and I just walked in, and we were in there for like 30 seconds, like, get out now.
Yeah.
It used to just be kind of edgy. Now it's just blatant.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Oh, yeah, I haven't been in one in
Don't
15,
go.
20 years probably.
Yeah.
Seriously. Anyway, get back on track here.
Sorry.
What we were saying?
Judgment. Judgmental. And I think some of it is that's another word that can kind of be used different ways, because you're talking about making judgment calls. That to me feels different than judging someone or things like that. I've kind of looked at it, and this is just me, but the whole judging someone, we're not the ones saying necessarily that this is right or wrong. God has already said what's right or wrong. We're just holding them accountable to it. And I feel like that's different than, to your point, Steve, I'm not the one doing the condemning. I didn't make the list of rules. I'm just trying to follow the rules, and calling a brother out on it is just following. It's not me in the role of judge. It's more the policing of the the rules that are already there, kind of.
Yeah, and even when we do that, though, that judgmental attitude comes in, where we have to keep in mind that they'll say, "And except for the grace of God, there go I." And so when we do, I think it should be a rare thing. Number one, confronting someone, and when we do, we should do it from a place of brokenness. Not in any way, shape, or form with a haughty attitude or a prideful look or anything like that. It should become, hey, we're in this together. We're both sinners saved by grace. And I need to, I don't know if you're aware, I need to, to mention this to you or whatever. So it should be with an attitude of brokenness and humility when we do have to confront someone, and we do occasionally, especially in leadership. We've had in other churches I've been a part of, some very serious things we've had to confront people about that were very open and very serious, and it should be done prayerfully, cautiously, in brokenness, but there's a time when a close friend, if you see someone slip into going astray a little bit, you do that in love and brokenness, out of not out of a haughty attitude or a prideful, but out of, a caring, loving, and there, so I think that's where we get into that judgmental, and I don't think anybody would for them in the moment, you probably not, it's uncomfortable, but if someone does that right, it's actually a beautiful thing, and it shows love and concern,
Yeah, it's a really are you willing to walk alongside someone? Are you willing to, we're called to bear one another's burdens.
Mm-hmm.
So you come in such humility and brokenness and in a keen awareness of your own sinfulness. I mean, that's why Jesus talks about, remove the plank or the log or the beam from your own eye that you might see clearly, to remove the speck from your brother's. And those words there, the speck or the splinter, it is a part of the larger log or beam. I mean, the words there, they're tied together. So in other words, you're recognizing that you have way more of what you're seeing in your brother or your sister is within you. So it's how do I take care of that first? And that only comes from, confession and repentance and humility, and like you talked about, brokenness, which we hear the word brokenness, I think a lot of times we look at it as a negative thing. And indeed, when someone's traumatized, in a sense, there's a brokenness that takes place. But there's a beauty in brokenness when it comes to our spiritual journey. There really is, because when we are broken, the Lord is able then to mend us the way He wants. I mean, the I don't want to call it a metaphor, but the shepherd and the sheep. Sometimes sheep would go astray, and the shepherd would have to do what? He'd break one of their legs, and then he'd set it and bind it and carry that sheep, on his shoulders. And so that lamb or that sheep would learn, usually a lamb would learn, like, I'm not going to wander, and I'm going to stay close to the shepherd.
Yeah.
And sometimes, we have the tendency to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because we be sheep.
And when we talk about brokenness, it's not it's a breaking of pride. It's a breaking of, the selfishness. It's a breaking of those things, which is actually, what we all should desire ultimately, to be broken in that way, where, because pride is a horrible thing, and we all deal with it at some level. And walking with Jesus, he was one that was, incredibly humble. And humble doesn't mean you hide under a rock, or whatever. Humility is right. It's not putting yourself down, but
right.
It's rightly seeing who you are in God's eyes, and and seeing other people, and so yeah, it's all part of that. So we do that out of love, and not from a an arrogant attitude. It's a whole different thing.
Yeah. You brought up, humility. I mean, maybe for just a second, there's a real danger with false humility, right?
Which is actually pride.
It is. Yes. Yeah. And it's interesting how it's
pride with a label put across it says humility.
Humility. That's a great image. I like that mental image. All right, so what are some ways that false humility, how does it look? We had to think about that for a second, like.
Well, kind of like you said, if I want you to know how humble I am, I think that's a false humility.
I'm the most humble person I know.
I'm proud of the humility God has given me.
I am. I'm proud of the humility. Well, we're told in the Word, like the Scripture says, like, no flesh will glory in His presence. We know that. And we really, when you read through the Gospels and read through the Sermon on the Mount, you read about these things where Jesus is constantly elevating the standard of the day, right? Over and over and over again. And he is calling us to really have a heart change, an attitude change, which leads to a change in our life. And I don't know, like the idea of humility, like doing our acts of service. I mean, it was very common in these days, doing your acts of service in front of people. And I struggle, like I even struggle as a pastor, even when churches want to like promote what they're doing, or like let's take a photo, let's post, these great things that we're doing. Jesus has said clearly in his word, like, you've received your reward.
Yeah.
Like, don't let your right hand know what the left. Don't let that happen. And I think sometimes we can fall into the trap, not only as individuals but corporately, of like, let's sing our sing our own praises. Like thinking about even the hurricane response, and there's wonderful churches and groups and organizations that are partnering together and going down there. But I was struck by a comment that I saw where one church was basically like, you don't need everyone in your church's T-shirts while they're working. Like, let's just work. Like, it doesn't matter who gets the credit. And I was like, yeah, because you could put an effort together, and from a business standpoint, which the church isn't a business, it just isn't. Branding is important. Do you really need to put all that out there? And I hope I don't sound like I'm being critical. It sounds like I'm being judgmental, right? But Jesus tells us, like, do all those things in secret. Pray in secret. Give in secret. Give. And we have to believe what he says, and we have to practice what he says. It's not just belief. You can believe it all day long. If you don't put it into action, ultimately you don't really believe it. But anyway, that was a long way of kind of going around to.
That was good. It was good.
I appreciate that. I think I'll leave now. Goodbye. That was me walking away.
Yeah.
We need to install some sound effects on your computer.
Yeah.
Sound effect board. Yeah.
We got to increase our budget.
I'm getting on my horse, my high horse.
He had to use a stool. His stick.
all of that comes down to the your motivation for doing it.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with taking pictures to show this is what we're doing in the community. It's not to toot your own horn. It's to say, hey, look what you could be part of.
Yeah.
And it is a fine line.
It is. I've wrestled with that. Like, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. It is the heart in which it's done, but I've wrestled because I don't like, it doesn't happen often, but I don't like when someone's like, great word today. And I think it's happened 3 times in my life. Someone's like, that was a really good message. But maybe 4. It's usually my mom. I'm like, Mom, stop. Because you think everything I do is great.
Yeah.
But
Special boy.
outside of Mom.
That's why we have Mom.
Who listens to this, and she's going to hear this and probably spit her drink out at this point. But I kind of cringe at that. And maybe I'm overthinking it, but it's like, if you accept that, like, oh, you're welcome, or which is a dumb thing to say. Usually it's like, God is good. I know that's your default. I'm glad that the Lord was able to use something I said that made sense. I guess it's just, I think we always need to be mindful of.
Yeah.
You can
saying.
just say thank you.
Yeah,
You
can.
just say, hey, thank you.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to go beyond that.
Yeah,
You don't have to overthink it.
Yeah.
I mean, that goes back to the motivation thing, though, because, I'm sure most, if not all, people have done it at some point. They did something that they knew would be, kind of get positive attention for, and that's kind of the reason they did it, not to get it done, but to get the positive attention.
Mm-hmm.
That's the false humility.
Yeah.
Like, I know that I'm going to get an attaboy, so I'm going to do this thing, and then be like, oh, no, it's, no big deal. That's what it looks like daily,
That's why people bowl.
People still bowl?
Yeah, I think so.
I usually do like once every 1, 2, or 3 years I bowl. I guess people still bowl. I don't know. When was I mean, I did go bowling.
No, seriously.
I've been bowling, I think, once this year.
I've actually thought about this. I was at a kid's party one. This is years ago, and I just sat there and watched everybody. And it was every time somebody did, rolled the ball down the lane.
Way to go!
No matter how, oh my gosh, the high fives and everything. I said, people don't come here to bowl. They come here for affirmation. No, seriously. And
That's funny.
The test of that
and
is,
the nachos.
The test of that is how many people would bowl by themselves.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Very few people would actually do it by them. They go there for...
That's sad. To think about bowling by yourself. I've never done that. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Oh, I love bowling. No, you don't. You love the people.
You love the
affirmation.
It's a social thing.
Social.
Yeah. I want to be part of a team.
But,
So I go eat fried food from the snack bar.
Perceived as mildly athletic. Come on. It's not a sport. It's a game. Let's just be honest.
Is this the right time to announce the LCC bowling league that's starting up?
Yeah.
Our outdoor bowling league. But you take that analogy, but that's how we do a lot of things service wise.
Yeah.
Would you do it by yourself if nobody knew?
Oh yeah.
And I think there's a good test, maybe a litmus test for your service. If nobody knew or could say, "Hey, good job," or whatever, would you still do that for the kingdom, or are you looking for the attaboy or the the affirmation or whatever? And yeah, so
that's I love it. I just sitting here like processing through. That's a great analogy with the bowling. We should go
I've been
bowling.
waiting 20 years to use that analogy.
Are you serious?
I've used it before, but yeah,
Okay.
It did. Honestly, it did. I was at a kid's. My kids were invited to this bowling birthday party, and so I just sat there and watched everybody, and I realized that But yeah,
It's not about the
and
bowling.
those we need community and we need fellowship, and all those things are very, very important. But when we put those, we try to. I do this because I want to do this, or do we do it for the affirmation? And so I think that's where that false humility comes in sometimes, and the motive we talked about. So if nobody knew what you were doing, would you still do it?
That's good.
Because Jesus is always watching, by the way, so He knows. We do things. What is it? Do things in secret. Don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. All that kind of stuff. And, I forget who said it. It's a really popular saying, but there's no limit to what a person can do if he doesn't care who gets the credit. So there's a lot of things that go along with that. We should put into practice because. We play for an audience of one. Ultimately, we should be playing for an audience of one, and that's God. He's watching. He's keeping score.
And when I do my poetry slam nights at the local coffee house, it is an audience of one because no one wants to hear my spoken words.
It's you and the guy playing the bongos.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's good.
lousy beatnik. Groovy man, let's snap. That's going back to the 60s.
I can't do that anymore.
50s and 60s.
Yeah.
You can't snap.
No.
Greg does not have opposable thumbs.
They're from holding the paintbrush for so long. They won't reach that far anymore.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's
one of my other disabilities.
yeah, he's been your disability.
He's snapless.
Yes.
Wow.
Snap challenge.
That's amazing. I
Yeah.
had no idea.
Yeah.
You've learned some trivia. Pastor Greg cannot snap his fingers.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go.
So we're talking about judgment, talking about false humility, talking about
Please don't
the
judge
important-
me for not snapping my fingers.
I'm not judging you, man.
Thank you.
I'm not judging you based on how differently abled you are. You're differently abled. Jesus in verse 5 of Matthew 7, he talks about people who don't judge rightly or don't do so by taking care of the log in their own eye. He calls them hypocrites, and that's a word that gets thrown around a lot. Hypocrite.
Mm-hmm.
So what is a hypocrite? We say it a lot.
But if you go back, the word actually is it's a Greek culture is an actor.
Mm-hmm.
and they call their actors, people get up and pretend to be someone else.
Yep.
They're hypocrites.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's where that word comes from.
To wear,
So it's
to wear a
someone-
mask. Yeah.
Yeah, it's someone who is acting like something they're not.
Have you ever talked to somebody who's made a statement similar to this? Well, I used to go to church, but I don't go to church anymore because there's so many hypocrites.
Yeah.
Have you ever wanted to say,
They
yeah,
said
and if you
just
came
like
there,
that.
it'd be one more? Because it's always interesting how,
Yeah.
let's just be gut honest. Everyone on some level has been or is or will be a hypocrite
Yeah.
because we're humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had conversations with people. Nope, that person, they are always who they are. They never lie. They've never. It's like, no, they're not Jesus. They're not. Yeah. He's the one that, and he's calling us not to be hypocrites.
Mm-hmm.
But again, going back to humility and this understanding that we are all how we present, and we live in a culture today that it is all about wearing masks.
Mm-hmm.
We call them filters today on the physical side, but we try to put on these spiritual filters, as it were. Like,
Well, that's what social media is based on. Presenting a life that you don't actually live.
True.
yeah, it's
You know,
it's a
it's a
persona
glamorous-
you're trying to
yeah.
create, not the person.
Most of life is boring and mundane.
Not mine. It's amazing. Do you follow me on Instagram?
I do not.
Yeah, because I thought I'm on there, but I don't post anything ever. That's so funny. I get requests, people want to follow me, and I'm like, why? I don't think I've ever made a post. But they see my name. Oh, I want to follow.
They're looking for someone who does less than they do. Make them feel.
I think there's a picture of
for
like
the
an American
affirmation.
flag on there. I don't even know what's on there.
Yeah.
Probably should check.
That
So if
fits-
you'd like
that
to follow
fits right
Steve,
into
it's
the
at
hypocrisy,
Steve
right?
Forrester.
I mean,
I don't even think it's
find
that. It's
someone
Steve
who-
Forrester
who
too.
does
Yeah,
less
as
than they do.
Steve, the number Forrester too. I think it is, or Junior, something like that.
Sven, I'm sure wants to
Sven,
follow
he
you.
wants to follow me. I'll
Yeah.
get some requests like, I want to follow you. I hate social media.
Yep, it's bad.
I'm biased.
Anyway, so hypocrite.
Yeah.
Let's get back to that.
Well, I think in the context here, like thinking through, like almost teaching one thing and doing another. You know, you can do it in the form of like an acting, but we were talking last night in our fire group beginning of Romans there, and he's basically chewing out the Jewish people because they were to be the guides for the Gentiles who were becoming believers, and yet they were teaching one thing, and then they weren't following their own teaching. You know, and in Matthew 23, Jesus, scolds the leaders, the religious leaders for that. What I loved about in Romans is that he takes the leaders almost out of the equation and says, no, for all of us, this holds true. If we're going to be a guide for somebody, if we're going to disciple another, then we have to be authentic in our faith, but we also have to be living what we're teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in this, like we can be very judgmental of somebody, while at the same time struggling with the very same thing that they're struggling with.
Or other things. How much do you think the sin ladder, this is worse than that. So I can wallow in my sin, but I'm calling you out because it's worse. How much does that affect the hypocrisy?
Yeah.
I like that image. I never heard of the term sin ladder. I've never heard of it before.
No.
That's
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you made that up, you should like trademark that. Like, I've never heard of sin ladder.
That
I
should
mean,
be
first off,
your
it
book.
would make an awesome band name. Like seriously. Wow. But you're right. Like we love to judge people.
Yeah.
I think I said on Sunday we judge everyone else by their actions and ourselves by our intentions.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a scary place to be.
Why do you think it's so easy to think someone else's sin is worse than yours? If it's the same thing, and there's involved in all that is a self-deception. I
Sure.
get that.
It's like what you said. I mean, it's the actions versus the intentions.
Mm-hmm.
You can say, "Oh, well, they're doing that. I am too," but I'm trying to blah blah blah.
Yeah, at least
and
my intentions
justify
were
it.
good. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and we're good at justifying why we're struggling with that. Like, obviously, your struggle's not my struggle, and you
Right.
know, so I can judge you,
Yeah.
but you know, I went through this, and this, which is why I struggle with
Right.
that sin.
Right, and I think it goes back to that. Even the language you just used, struggle. It's a struggle. I'm not sinning. I'm struggling.
I'm struggling.
That means I'm fighting against,
Yeah.
which is in a sense true. We all are struggling and fighting against the flesh. By the power of the Spirit, we're able to overcome these things. But you're absolutely right. And it goes back to judging motivation, judging heart. We can't see the heart. Only God knows the heart, and we don't know what people have gone through. So for us to be like, well, because I've heard this too, where people say, well, God understands me. Well, that is a true statement. God does understand you. He knows everything about you, but not in the sense of like, well, he understands me to the point of like my dispensation, as it were, is a little different than yours. Like
He's going to make
God,
exceptions
yes,
for you.
God and I have
Yeah,
an
right.
arrangement. I've heard people say we
yes.
have an arrangement. Have you heard that
Yeah,
before?
yes,
God and I have an understanding.
Yes.
We have an arrangement. God and I are good. I've heard that too. We're good.
Yeah.
I don't need the church. I don't need
yeah.
religion. I don't need that. We're good. Like, no, you're not. You're deceiving yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why Christ gives the church is his plan. It's his gift. We're supposed to walk together as brothers and sisters. We're supposed to, the struggle, as it were, is together. And if we really walk that out in humility with towards one another, it's imagine what life could be like if we really were esteeming one another greater than ourselves, serving with the towel, as I mentioned on Sunday. I mean, to me, it's just like, wow, it just kept echoing in my mind. Like, Jesus had every right to be like, you're filthy, you're disgusting, you're a traitor, and he would be completely right. And he is literally the only one who could point the finger and condemn because he knew what was in their hearts, but he didn't. He gets down and he just serves and washes their feet, sets the example. Do this for one another, because he knew. And the fact that the church exists, the fact that Jesus picks these men and pours into them, let's 3 years, right? 3 years. That's it. Like, Jesus' earthly ministry, what we would call ministry in our modern day context, 3 years, doesn't I want to phrase this right because I don't want someone to say like you're a heretic. So how do I say this? But
Too late.
it's not. It's too late. I am. No, but it's not like he like, okay, I've got 3 years, so let me give you this incredibly detailed plan of like everything you're going to need to know and everything you're going to do. He just pours into them, and it was really about who he was, right, in the relationship with him. And then he, knowing the imperfections, knowing the failings, and he knows, like, I'm going to send you the promise of the Father, the Spirit, the Holy Spirit is going to be in you, and knowing that's all we need, and to set that in motion. The fact that we're even here today having this conversation, if you don't think that Jesus was from the living Son of God, you're kidding yourself, because no organization could ever start this way. This ragtag group of people who lose their lives, gain no fame, no fortune, lose their lives, are seen as outsiders and outcasts in a world. Like, why are we even talking about this today? It's because he's the truth, and we are part of that story, and he wants us to live in such a way where we are just laying down our lives one for another. And I'm so glad when you read through the book of Acts, it was never, there was all these imperfections along the way and lessons that had to be learned by Peter and others, and we're learning lessons even today.
Well, I think one of the misconceptions about the disciples particularly is that it was what they all had in common that brought them together.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we tend to think like they were they were similar. But the reality is, and somebody mentioned that the Chosen kind of brings this out, is that they were completely different people.
Mm-hmm.
Which led them to have those arguments about who's the greatest and the constant infighting amongst them, because they were so different, very similar to our churches in our world today. Like, we're different, and yet the commonality wasn't that we're the same. The commonality was Jesus, and that if we're all, and that's why when Jesus says stuff like, they will know you by your love for me, or love for each other.
Mm-hmm.
They will know you love me by your love for each other. And we read that like, oh, that's cool. Well, if you really begin to dive into the lives of those disciples and how different they really are,
Mm-hmm.
like that's a shocking statement. Like the way that you love each other. And I think when we talk about judgment, we tend to, I don't know, there's so many different layers because you can look at this, and I think Jesus is talking about from a perspective of sin and like being judgmental of sin. But if not, a big problem in our church communities today, if not bigger problem, is that we become judgmental of, practices. We become judgmental of things that aren't necessarily sin. And so we
Preferences.
And we don't love each other through those. We just judge. And so that's when we hear words like, church hurt and stuff like that, because I was judged, because I like this music, or I was judged because I ran a ministry this way, or I was judged because it wasn't judged because of my sin. I was judged based on very peripheral things and losing the focus of what Jesus said. Like, if you want to live outreach in this world, if you want to live an evangelistic type of a life, then you have to love each other.
Yeah.
And not just love each other by walking alongside sinners, which we are, but love each other by supporting each other. Yeah. And even if I don't necessarily disagree, following the rules set up through God's word of Matthew 18 or whatever, to say, okay, let's talk about, and even Matthew 18 is based on sin, right? I want to come to you as a sin in your life, and I want to walk alongside you in that. But we take this judgment thing to I don't like how you're doing that, so I'm going to judge, and I'm going to tell everybody around me, how much I don't like it, which then just leads to this division in the church. And the more of that we have, the less people see Jesus.
Yeah, that's a good word.
The disciples were struggling with those same kind of things, but you have to kind of read between the lines of what's happening in those different scenarios through those 3 years.
And you said to Steve's point that he, with this limited time, Jesus didn't come with a detailed 1,000-page plan or manifesto or here's how we're going to do this.
A binder.
He walked with them.
Yep.
He talked with them. He loved them. He supported them, and everything was
that
gleaned
example
from that.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
I just sit there thinking, if you look at cults and false religions, they're very strict in their practices, and everybody has to conform. So you can spot one of them, a mile away. So it's very. You have to, follow these things across all cultures and stuff. You all become the same. And if you're not part of the group.
Yeah.
And the difference with Jesus, the gospel. We talked about this before, but the gospel, if it doesn't work across cultures,
time
and groups and time, it's not the gospel.
Yeah, you're right.
And so instead of having this very narrow set of rules and stuff with the Pharisees, that's what they fell into. And they missed it. Jesus comes, and what we're all talking about here is he gives himself, and then this thing and all these different people, and this thing just explodes in this revival, in its outpouring, and the church is born, and all this. So it's not, and we get the petty things. We will look at. I grew up in a thing like that. I got pulled out of line one time at a religious, it was actually a college, because my hair was too long. It was touching my collar.
Heathen.
Yes. So I had, and so we make,
it is a disgrace for a man to have long hair.
It
the
is.
scripture
You couldn't
says.
tell anyway.
You're a sinner. I see that tattoo.
But
Sinner.
I had a guy actually, yeah.
I see your fabric of two types on your body.
Yeah.
Sinner.
Cotton and polyester.
Are you wearing denim as well?
No, I'm
The
not.
devil's fabric, denim. Forged in the fires of Gehenna. You sinner.
He needs to
This
do
is-
an interview with Dana Carvey as church lady.
Who could it be? I don't know. Satan.
I actually heard a guy say one time, and it sounds odd at first glance. Okay. But he said this. Steve just spit his water all over the place.
Sounds odd.
It does. And here it is. Ready? Ready? Love God and do what you want. See, it sounds odd at first, but if you love, Jesus said, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. So if you love God, if you love God,
That's the
you'll love people.
qualifier. Yeah.
Yeah, love God and do what you want. And so what that
Because
means
what you
is,
want to do is
well, yeah,
what
because
God wants you to do.
yeah, but you're not locked in to this cult-like list of rules. Because God, like the disciples, they were all different people, and they all had different responsibility, all had different ministries. So if you love God, and He might use you here, or use the talents and gifts that He's given you, or the passions He's given you, or whatever to use for His glory. Or someone else on the other, like, what are you doing? This is what God's called me to do.
Kind of sounds like a 60s version of seek first and these shall be added to you.
Yeah. But it's not falling into that, and that's where that judgmental thing comes. Well, you're not doing it like us.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
We have this idea: church has got to be this way. It's all got to be this way.
Yeah, but
certain.
that makes me feel better.
Oh yeah, because we like parameters.
I want to know. Like,
Yeah.
I want you to speak the language I speak.
Yeah.
You need to use the certain jargon, the catchphrases. Hey, brother, how you doing? Well, I'm saved by the grace of God. God is so good. And I know there are people that genuinely that's how they talk. But there's also people that we just throw that on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Do you do that? On the construction site,
Yeah.
or at the
I met people that have,
firehouse?
actually.
Are you like, well, bless God, it's another glorious day?
Yeah.
Or are you doing other things? We even do it in church, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I fall into that trap. I know I sound judgy. I'm not trying to be judgy. Do I sound judgy? I sound a little judgy. I'm trying to judge myself right now. You're just staring at me. It's getting awkward.
I'm wondering how you're going to get out of this.
I don't think there's anything I have to get out of. It's like it's just being honest. Sometimes we can be judged.
Understanding that, the qualifiers in the verse, judge lest you be judged. So the standard by which you're judging, you're going to be held to too.
Yeah.
So,
And that
you
leads
have-
right into the glorious part is grace.
Yeah.
God has extended amazing grace to us, and we should extend grace to other people. And so instead of, you offended me, right off the bat, people, being offended is like a hobby now for people. So, they excel in it.
It's like the Olympics of offense. How can I
always looking to be
how can I be more offended than the next person? I'm offended by the language you use. Well, I'm offended because you're offended.
Instead
I
of
can't believe
that,
you put down bowling.
Yeah.
yeah.
I thought you meant bowling.
But yeah, so, but if we excel in grace, a lot of our problems would disappear. In our relationships with other believers, God extended His grace to us, to me, and I don't deserve it. And maybe I should extend that same kind of grace to someone else.
Right.
When
you say offense, ultimately the offense is against God.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we forget that. And do I really have a right to walk around like you owe me? It's the whole story of the wicked servant, right? He's forgiven this great debt, and he goes out and finds his brother who owes him a little bit of money and has him thrown in prison.
Yeah.
Roughs him up. Give me that $5 you owe me.
Oh, the other servants are so upset. They went back.
They go back and tell the king.
Yeah, and it didn't end well for
wicked
this
servant.
guy.
Didn't end well.
Yeah.
No.
But yeah, I think that's how we need to look at, instead of major on those things. Now there are times, and once again, I think it's rare when we have to approach someone, and it's usually someone who's in leadership or is trying to do whatever. But that does happen, and it's rare. It should be rare. But for the most part, we should really extend grace, and I think that's what this is talking about. Okay, yeah, he's got a problem, but if I
I'll solve it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If you got a problem, I'll solve it. Check out the beat pop DJ Revolve it. Ice, baby. I'm sorry. The phraseology just hit me. Sorry.
Oh my!
I just wrecked that whole comment. I'm sorry.
No.
I'm a hijacker.
Anybody under 40 has no idea what you're talking about.
You're absolutely right, though.
You're right.
We should be giving grace, because at the end of the day, first off, I mean, no one knows. We're talking about judging based on intention versus action, right? Nobody knows what's in their heart except that person and God. And more than likely, you have no idea what their circumstances are that got them to that point or whatever. So the best thing that we can do is just extend grace, right?
Yeah. It's you never know what someone's going through. You never say someone, had a rough day, or and you take it personally, and we do that a lot. Extend grace, and that whole thing, judge not lest you be judged. It's telling you not to. It's just don't judge. So this is how you're supposed to judge.
Rightly.
So that now there are times same things are bad. Well, boy, the hammer comes down. I've had to testify in court.
So it's hammer time.
I'm sorry. I had one pair of
full-blown 80s, 90s
parachute pants.
Right. What'd you say?
I only had one pair of parachute pants.
You had a pair? Yeah. Are you serious? I didn't even have that.
Oh, sorry.
That's awesome.
No, it's not.
Can you dance like Hammer?
Oh, no.
You can't? That'd be awesome.
I can hobble around like I do.
Is Greg playing the part of Michael Keaton in the Other Guys movie where he keeps using references to who is it?
To TLC
songs?
references.
He's like, I don't know what you're talking
Hey guys, don't go chasing waterfalls. See that you did it again. That's another TLC reference. I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh my.
Well, you talk about. I mean, grace and mercy, right? James 2:13. For judgment is without mercy to the one who has shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. And I know it's Chuck Smith who said it. I think you're the first one that ever turned me on to Chuck's teaching, but Chuck said he would rather err on the side of mercy rather than judgment.
Yeah.
He might have said that at a conference you were at, maybe, if I remember right.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, echoing what the scripture says, I'd rather err on the side of mercy than judgment. And I think that's how we should always live our life.
Yeah.
And mercy is different. I mean, grace is definitely a thing that what you're talking about, but grace and mercy are different. Mercy is, I think you deserve this, or you may deserve this, but I'm not going to give you what you deserve. And grace is giving you something that you don't deserve. So
that's it. Mercy triumphs over judgment.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? What? You're looking at me. Everyone's looking at me weird. It's the stuff on my face. I know what it is.
Just sitting here wondering, what is that?
What is that?
Judging you.
Judging you. He obviously doesn't care for his face.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, I've been blessed with a rare skin disorder. It's extremely rare, but benign. If it continues, my whole face will be just dark and splotches everywhere, which I'm super excited about, by the way.
You'll be unique then.
Yes. I look like a spotted, what is it?
Oh, keep going. Keep going.
What Aaron's falling away from the table. What is happening? I'll just stop there.
Oh, I wanted you to finish that.
No.
Yeah.
I was going to say like a dapple gray horse.
Spotted dapple gray
Well,
horse.
there's spotted dapple grays, like an Appaloosa maybe. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I hear dapple gray, I always think of the song "Over the River and Through the Woods, to Grandmother's House We Go."
Yeah.
The horse knows the way to carry the sleigh
Oh,
through the white and drifting snow.
yeah.
But it talks about trot fast, my dapple gray.
It does.
I don't know. Do you remember?
I do.
Don't you remember we had to learn those songs in school, like elementary school? You had to learn how to sing in choir or chorus. Did you guys have chorus?
Yeah.
I mean, it started in elementary school.
All music
did.
class.
I was in Christian
Music
school,
class,
though,
yeah.
so we were singing carols.
You were singing carols.
They only had 3 people in his class.
Yeah, one of them was 18, one was 11, one was 4. He's got his shirt on.
Our choir was a trio.
Christian school is the goodest. I'm just kidding. I'm a huge fan of Christian education.
Oh, my,
Lord's
yes.
going to help us plant a Christian school here in Calvert. It's
Yes,
going to happen.
yes, Lord.
More convinced of that than ever. And I love Christian education. I think it's hugely important.
Yes, I agree.
So-
I agree 100%.
Anyway, I'm going to stop talking. You guys can continue the conversation.
Ramble on.
Hold on. Well, we hope I won't stop talking. I'll just keep talking. And we hope you've enjoyed today's broadcast. Not that it's a broadcast, it's a recording.
Yeah. Podcast.
There we go.
Where'd that word pod come from?
Oh, that's a great question.
That
Is it
is a
from the
great
iPod?
Probably from
Podcast.
iPod.
I mean, it is probably
How it
iPod.
started.
iPod.
Like
Yeah.
you listen to recordings. There's been some interest
Could have
among
been
the
a
young adults.
Cassette cast?
I don't know if you. I had talked with them one night. They had just asking random questions. We got on the topic of like aliens. Did I tell you this?
No,
Aliens. They asked about aliens in the Bible and all this, and it came up like, we should do you should do a podcast or do like a series or create a new podcast that just deals with like all of these like odd subjects that people talk about,
Oh,
but from a Christian perspective.
that would be fun.
Yeah. So just like
Oh, good. Yeah.
picture like I don't know, what would be a show? What was that show that Leonard Nimoy did back in the 70s? Going back to the 70s. See, this is a tie-in to the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
Do you remember he would get on
yeah.
there and be like,
I saw Coral Castle was on there.
yeah, but anyway,
What was it called?
you know what?
He did one, and then Shatner did one. And,
Yes.
Oh, he
and
still
then
does
the
one.
guy from the Next Generation did one. They were all kind of the same thing.
Same
Dan Aykroyd does
Yeah, they
one
were-
now.
It was called In Search of.
That's
There you
it.
go.
Let's
In
look
Search
it
of.
up. In
Yep.
Search of.
search
Yep.
of.
That was a great. In search of lost civilizations, extraterrestrials. In search of.
Coral Castle was a cool thing.
Yeah.
That was-
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that
pretty
is- that is
amazing.
cool.
Yeah, how that was built. But anyway,
Cool.
maybe we'll do that sometime. We'll have to give it a creative name. In search of the truth.
That's so
And tie it all to Jesus. Super creative, right?
Wow.
Trademark. I just trademarked it. That's legal. You can't use it.
I'm gonna need a moment to recover from that creativity.
That's what I bring. That's what I bring to this
Bring
mix.
to-
Just super creative.
Wow.
Super humble.
Yeah.
Super creative. Super non-judgy. Anyway, we will. We're just gonna say bye. So have a great day. God bless. We'll see you next time.
All right. God bless.
Thanks for listening to LCC Remix. If you have any questions about this podcast, reach out via email at lccremix@lifechurchcalvert.com. LCC Remix is a podcast ministry of Life Church Calvert, located in Huntingtown, Maryland. You can visit our website, lifechurchcalvert.com, or download our app by typing in Life Church Calvert in your app store today.